Mike is the guy who was in the red suit in the video, so I think he did a pretty good job, and I'm with the mayor. I think we should nominate him for an Oscar. Anyway, please welcome Mike Ghilotti. Thank you.
Morning, everybody. So, who thinks Phil's going to be on a morning workout show on TV in the next 6 months? Awesome job there. Hey, great day for the city, great day for all of you being here. This is by far the best thing that's happened in the city since Giants winning the World Series. Okay? So we got a parade for you next year, and you got to get out and walk a little bit or something. But you know, this is really monumental because, as far as I know, and I think it's out there, first major metropolitan city to implement a full partnering program. First city, okay? City is a city of first. San Francisco is making it happen on partnering. So what do we start talking about when we're in our sustainability group, you know, for the Caltrans? We say, well, you know, we got to keep this going. San Francisco's now doing it. Let's go get Oakland. Fuad says, I don't want Oakland to know about partnering. You want all those contractors over here. We don't want them going to Oakland. So, you know, it'll take time. Oakland is down the road. But for what San Francisco's been able to do is tremendous. I want to acknowledge Mayor Lee. What an incredible vision he has for the city, and what a great leader he is. And Mohammed for, you know, being the leader and making this happen. This is a giant leap of faith. You know, this doesn't happen easily. And I can tell you that the town hall meetings that you've heard about, right, where we were looking at how do we become a better city, how do we become an agency of choice, right, developed two things that already got talked about. One was prompt pay, and the other one was dispute resolution. Those are the two biggest issues in working in the city. So Mohammed comes to me and asks me the day of the breakout session, you know, Mike, do you want to chair the dispute resolution committee? And of course I said yes, because, is he here? If you know Mohammed, he doesn't really ask, right? But, you know, in talking with him, you know, we learned and we came together and said, you know what, why is it dispute resolution? Why are we forming a task group to solve those problems, to resolve claims? Why don't we get out in front of it? And so that's how this all turned into a task force on partnering and why we're here today. And, you know, to look at that happen, you know, Rob was helping me with dates. I'm Italian, so numbers and figures don't last very long. But, you know, August 2012, we called up Rob and said, hey, the city wants to implement a partnering program. Come help. IPI, come on over here, right? Less than 10 months later, 9 months later, you know, July 2013, we had a set of specs and we're moving forward. That's coming from a city that most people accuse of not making very timely decisions. That's incredible. So great things there. And I just want a little bit about myself and you know, where I am. And, you know, Ghilotti Brothers celebrating our 100th year this year. So I'm very excited about that. But I'd have to tell you, it's because of the renaissance in our company that I'm most proud of. And the renaissance is because of the partnering culture that we've instituted. And I only got about that from what I learned in becoming a partner in projects. In the last 6 years, we've done 14, I think, award-winning projects. You know, we have 3,000 projects that we have done in the last 9 years. We have no notice of potential claims. And we instituted an internal policy where any job that we do, more than $1 million, is facilitated partnering. So you could say I'm passionate about partnering. I know my kids will, because I ask them, they're tired of hearing me say, give me your big, hairy, audacious goals every New Year's Eve for the next year. You know, my wife, she's not very excited about the fact I always keep asking her to value engineering her household budget. She's got that fork out, and it's getting closer to me every year. But, you know, I'm passionate about it because I believe in it. And it's a life changer. It's a life changer for your company, and it's a life changer for you guys as well, you know, personally. So, you know, pause and think, what's possible? And that kind of came up today, you know, what's possible. And you think about, you know, what's possible with the city, what's possible with us all here today. Well, when you put together, you know, mutual goal setting, and you put together world-class teamwork and communication, anything is possible. Anything is possible with partnering. And so I think that we're very excited today to showcase 2 projects that exemplify that. 2 projects that had huge potential for catastrophe, high level of risk, a lot of obstacles, and became award-winning projects. So today, I'm excited to share with you the first project, and this is the runway safety area at SFO. Today we have Tania, Gharechedaghy. Is that even close? I did better than yesterday. Oh, give me a thumbs up. Come on, jeez. You know, if you were just going to be, you know, Maria Alberetti, I'd be okay with that. And Quinn Hance, who are representing SFO and Gallagher and Burk, and they're going to tell us about their project, and then we got a couple of topic questions, and we'll do, as you're listening, there's some cards going around, is that correct, Mindy? Yeah, so those will be going around, so if you've got a couple panel questions, you can fill those out, and those will be filtered into me, only with the easy questions. And then at the end of both presentations, we'll go through and bring those in. So welcome, and tell us about your project.
Great. Good morning, everyone. Can you all hear me? As Mike so kindly tried to tell you all, my name is Tania Gharechedaghy. I'm a project manager at SFO. And I'll just start with a little intro on the project. So SFO's Runway Safety Area program is something that's being implemented there in response to a mandate by Congress, which basically said we had to put a safety area at the end of every single runway at every single airport in the country. So, can you pull the mic up? I can, yeah. Sure. Is that better? Yes. Okay, so this is a $200 million plus program. It's being implemented through a number of different interrelated projects. And the first of those that was completed is the one we'll talk about today, which was the Runway 10 Right Paving and Lighting Project. The main purpose of that project was to extend the runway on the 10 Right end so the next project could come in, shift the end of that runway, and get the safety area on that end. So in addition to the runway work that we did, we also did some of the surrounding improvements. We built a taxiway. You can kind of see the before and after pictures, or you could have seen. We built a taxiway. We worked on the FAA's navigational aid system. We did a pretty significant amount of underground utility work and obviously some electrical work. Some details?
Yeah, I'm Quinn Hance with Gallagher and Burk. We were the prime contractor on the contract, and the project consisted of, it was a $10.8 million contract, consisted of 35,000 yards of excavation, 400,000 square feet of cold planing, 25,000 tons of AV, 40,000 tons of CTB, and 30,000 tons of AC paving. And what made it unique was all this work was done in 109 calendar days on the end of a live runway. So to put that in perspective, we're doing right around $4 million a month, and in the middle of an election year, which made for some exciting issue resolution with interim milestones. And in that 109 days, we had 4 interim milestones we had to meet that mostly related to FAA navigational aids that had to be tested so that at the end of the project they could go live. And there were liquidated damages associated not just with the completion of the project, but also with each of those individual milestones. So the project was under was a bit of a hot seat just from the onset, and we really came together as a team and partnered well, and I think we did have an exceptional outcome.
Yeah. So. Partnering was not required on that project as it is on projects today, but we decided to do it anyway for mainly the reasons that Quinn just spoke about, but also there was some publicity attached to this project because we were working at the end of a live runway and because inevitably it would be causing flight delays in and out of SFO for the entire duration of our project. So there was that. Second, again, the pace of the project just really meant that we didn't have time or the luxury to kind of dilly-dally through the decision-making processes. Literally, we had 1 to 2 hours to resolve issues on the field before they would affect the schedule. To give you a little more perspective on top of what Quinn gave you, a project like this, of this size and scope at the airport, would typically span a year or 2. So to be attempting to take on that project in 3 months' time was incredibly daunting for us. There was no float in the schedule at all. We had to get that runway opened so that the next project could come in and do their work at the other end. In addition to those, there were some pretty typical complication factors that projects have. I won't go into the number of, or the names of the stakeholders that we had to deal with, but there were dozens of people to coordinate with on a day-to-day basis. And again, like Quinn mentioned, we were doing construction on a fully operational runway and airfield. Not only were the taxiways open surrounding the site, so we had aircraft continually taxiing around the work site. The runway was open, because except for the small part of the runway that they were physically on, the runway was completely operational, and these guys had aircraft taking off and landing right over their heads the entire time. So partnering for us really helped alleviate some of those pressures, and I think, again, like Quinn said and Jeff mentioned earlier, helped us achieve the exceptional project outcome we were looking for.
Yeah, the process of partnering really benefited the project. We had just a need through the pressure cooker of the job to quickly develop a culture of trust from top to bottom. And because we didn't have time to have disputes, no matter how small they were, the schedule did not allow for us to slide one day. And we had very open and honest communication. And at a certain point, there's some inherent vulnerability with airing some of your dirty laundry, as I like to call it, which is issues that we each have. You're exposed, and that's okay, because we were all working towards a common goal, which was to deliver the project on time and on budget for the airport.
And maybe there was a little cleanup from prior projects.
Yeah, there was in the facilitated partnering session, an interesting thing that came out in the kickoff session was, as my firm had not done work on the airfield in maybe 10 years or so, there was maybe some misconceptions of some skeletons in the closet from past projects decades ago that no one in the room had worked on, but somehow this rumor had carried forward over time, and we came to find out that none of those issues still exist, and that we could work together. And I think that was a big thing that came out of the initial kickoff session, was there were these old rumors kind of somewhere back there that we were able to push aside and move on with this project on its own merit.
So as a competitor for San Francisco Airport work, I was glad that Quinn didn't find out that we'd started those rumors years before. I think you're going to hear, a couple themes resonate throughout this panel discussion, and one of them is, the partnering principles, and you hear about a high level of trust and the timely decision making. I mean, how many contractors have sat out there and said, well, I got to write an RFI, I guess I'll hear back in a week, right? And this team is performing at such a high level that decisions are made, at the lowest level possible, and trying to get feedback within hours. So you'll hear more and more of this as you go forward with us on high performing teams here. So what about for this group here, Tania and Quinn? A little bit about how the partnering project, how did you structure it? What did you use? What were the steps, the foundation to provide a platform to work forward?
So we did do a professional facilitation of our partnering process. This is Dyer of OrgMetrics. You probably all know who she is. But we started with a kickoff session. Interestingly enough, that kickoff session happened several weeks into our heavy construction. So, you know, Quinn and I had already been partnering in our own way and kind of wondered walking in the door, you know, what are we doing here? Do we really need this? And guess what? Yeah, we really did. We needed that formal focus that kickoff session gave us to really help us achieve what we did on this project. So we started with the kickoff session. In that session, Sue helped us develop our project goals. Not what are we here to build, because obviously you've got plans and specs for that, but how can we build this in a way that's most beneficial to all of the parties involved. In addition to those goals, we were able to form our resolution ladder, which I cannot say enough good things about. You heard a little bit about in the past presentations, but the resolution ladder just, without it, we use it on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour basis, and without it, I don't think we would have been able to achieve what we did. We also had executive sessions. Management and leadership from both Gallagher and Burk in the airport met monthly on this project. We did not do core or stakeholder meetings because just the pace of the project didn't allow for it, but we did have an agenda item on our weekly construction meetings every single week to talk about partnering. There we addressed everyone around the table, made sure that there weren't any kind of lingering issues going around that we could, if we brought them to the table, could be resolved. And then finally we did a closeout session.
So, you know, those are typically, you know, the safeguards of a good partnered project. And Tania was talking about the resolution ladder, and we talk about why that's so important because, you know, you're working on an intense project like this. You get an issue, and you're both really, you know, both sides are really, you know, they're really solid in their position, right? They own that position, and they don't want to move. And then if you allow that to linger, it's a detriment to the job, but it also starts fraying the relationship, and it becomes really animostic. So, you know, the dispute resolution ladder, you know, give it your best shot, elevate it, move on, allow that group at that lowest level that's building to keep collaborating and working together. So, had success with that. Also, what is the number one challenge that you overcame, Quinn? I mean, you know, is there something that really applied well on something that you guys came across on the job?
Yeah, I think one thing definitely as a contractor that we weren't anticipating was interruptions of work due to arrivals of elected officials. So doing a tight time constraint project on an airfield where you know, the president and his campaign was using the city of San Francisco like their ATM. So you know, he's flying in routinely, and you know, we're on a tight schedule, and we have to clear the airfield for his arrivals, well in advance of his arrivals and well in advance of his departure. So we really had to partner through that process, because at what point do you stop the trucks from coming in? At what point do you have to clear the craftspeople from the work area? And we really used the dispute resolution ladder in the opposite direction on this one, because you couldn't bring the whole group and elevate these kinds of decisions. We had to resolve at the lowest level, you know, where to park the equipment, where is it okay for the Secret Service, all these kinds of things that we don't necessarily anticipate became issues on the job, and so it worked well.
Yeah, and you know, obviously the airport did pick the best contractor for the job, because I can tell you with my 88-year-old father, who is a staunch Republican, we probably would not have stepped work. But anyways, so, you know, executive level was another, executive partnering and executive sessions is another thing that Tania and Quinn have talked about, and I can tell you that's extremely effective for high-level projects. You know, the scorecards that we talked about earlier, you know, if everybody's included, all internal and external stakeholders, and you start seeing as a senior manager that the scorecards are trending downwards, or that there's notes that say there's a significant challenge in the group, pull that executive session together, rally the troops, reset it, and go forward. And it's a great technique. Another question for you is, about people and what you guys your lessons learned on, the people side of the project and that type of thing.
Well, I think as a lot of us know as contractors in the room, the construction industry is a people business, all the way from the top to the bottom. It's the work is not done without the hard work of our craftspeople that are building these projects. And knowing that, one partnering tool I think that we used was developing an interpersonal relationship, right? So it's not just about the work, right? It's not just the grind. Sometimes you need to vent about a personal issue so you can get down to business. And so we use that tool quite a bit with kind of personal check-ins. First thing in the morning, how you doing? How you feeling? Everything all right? Are we good? Okay, now we can talk about and really solve some tough issues. So that was one thing that we use that I think often gets missed in this industry is it's always about the task at hand. And I think implementing that strategy allowed us to get past those issues so we could really focus on the project.
Excellent. And I think, Jeff was talking about, learning and developing for future generations. And, if anybody else has future leaders that are like my kids, just getting them to look up from their iPhone and have an open conversation will be a compelling event. So the final thing for you both would be where were you guys in the closeout of the project? How did it finish? Kind of the results, maybe some metrics about the project, and did you get any hardware for the project? Were you recognized on an award-winning level?
Yes, we were. So I think the results of the project really speak well for themselves. We didn't have any claims. We were right on schedule, literally days. We got off the runway days before the next team needed to come back on. And we were about $400,000 under budget. And you can't ignore the fact that we're sitting up here talking about and celebrating the achievement. We did win an IPI award. These guys did as well. So I think they speak for themselves.
Yeah, on a different level, one of the goals we set out at the onset of the project was there had been some time, as I said before, since we had done work on the airfield with the city and county of San Francisco, and we wanted to leave the job as a preferred contractor. We didn't want to be the low bid, oh no, here they come again. We wanted to be a preferred contractor. We wanted to be excited to come back to work at the airport, and we wanted the airport to be excited to have us back. And I think we did achieve that as we're embarking on a new project, the second phase, where Tania and I will be working together again.
Excellent. And Tania introduced Sue Dyer, who is really the godmother of partnering, and also the creator of the International Partner Institute. And just a quick thought, if you will, on the project, Sue, and your role as a facilitator.
Yeah, the role of the facilitator, I think Rob talked about that a little bit, but it's that neutral person who is there to help create an atmosphere to allow open, honest dialogue. And with that, the collective wisdom comes out. But you have to have people who take it and run with it, like we had here. These are the heroes of the project, the people that are actually running it day in and day out. They're the ones that make it happen. And then coming back, I'm there to steer them and help along the way in anything they need to do. And that's really the role of the neutral, who I really see as sort of the change agent. So to help people come together and everyone work together as one team focused on the success of the project. So if you begin to see people moving off, the facilitator's role is to try to bring them back together so that they're one team, and then keep watching over the duration of the project. So they were a great team.
And if you've had Sue as a facilitator, you'll know that when things get a little sideways and maybe there's a little conflict there, you hear this Model A horn going off, and you learn to just get through things because that horn is such a distraction. You just rather be quiet, move forward. No, but Sue does a great job, and I think I'd like to have a round of applause for the San Francisco Runway Area A Sapphire Award winner for IPI. Nicely done. Our second showcase today is for the SFPUC project, the Crystal Springs Pipeline Number 2 Replacement Project. And with us today we have Jim Wang and Jessica Romm and John Nolan. And another award-winning project that, put yourself in the perspective that they are when you start this project off, knowing that out of all the things we do as contractors, the mystery that lies beneath the ground, doing an underground project, what is that going to throw at me? So you'll hear a lot of challenges and obstacles that they overcame in becoming an award-winning project. Good morning. Have at it.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. My name is Jim Wang. I work for the SFPUC. Brief description of this project. Basically, it was a project that was NTP back in March 2011. It's a 2-year duration project. Basically, it's just a pipeline replacement project that goes through various cities. In essence, we started our work from Burlingame all the way up to South San Francisco. So as you can see, there's quite a bit of cities that we had to go through and quite a bit of jurisdictions that we have to deal with. The design project, the estimate was about $43 million. Ranger came in at about $32.5 million. The next lowest bidder was about $6 million above that. So we knew that we had a
And they kept the job.
Yeah, and they kept the job. And we knew that we had a big challenge because it was a very lean project and we need to make sure that we work well together to resolve the issues out in the field so that it doesn't become too problematic. Basically, we have 12 sites to this project. Like I said earlier, got about 1.3 miles of pipeline replacement and another 3.5 miles of pipeline replacement on El Camino Real. There are milestones. There are about 5 milestones, as this is part of the WISIT program. That's the $4.6 billion worth of projects out there. There's quite a bit of coordinations that need to take place. So we need to adhere to our shutdown, and there are liquidated damages on various locations, as well as there was one very interesting, we call it Site 9. It's basically town of Hillsborough, the woman's backyard. We had to replace about 160 feet of piping in about 22 days, so we needed to giddy up and go. Of the project, we worked probably about 200,000 hours. There was no time lost. There were, due to injury. There was no NOPC for this project. And that's about it.
Okay. Before we go there, I erred in saying that something was going to be handed out, but actually what is in your program is the form to write a question or a comment. So Rob's holding it up because I'm showing that thing right there. So that's actually in your program. So start thinking about those now, and if you'll kindly move those to somebody in charge, we'll take those on at the end. So I got to tell you, in interviewing this group before today, right? We're on the phone and we're on a conference call, and you could tell the synergy between this group, because I'd ask a question and then there would be an answer and then there'd be laughter for 15, 30 seconds. And I don't know if it's a heritage thing. The Irish, they like to have their fun, but I know they weren't eating close in a pub. I know when I called you, you guys weren't in an adult beverage house. But the thing is that you can tell that the takeaway from this, from my experience, was that it was incredibly challenging, and yet they developed such a close relationship and such a good spirit that it carried on through to the post-mortem, which is rare. So, John, why don't you share a couple thoughts about the project and what you were up against, because you had to make it work.
Yeah, well, I mean, Site 12 was along El Camino Real. It's 3 miles of pipeline. 3 miles of pipeline replacement along El Camino, and anyone who's ever worked underground knows that every day you go out in the morning, start digging a hole, you find something that's not supposed to be there. So we had weekly meetings, we had 5 different jurisdictions we had to go through, and we had to pre-plan this well in advance.
Pictures. Jim, pictures.
We'll click. Never mind. Distraction. Sorry. Curveball.
Okay.
Partnering.
And then
overcome Ghilotti. Okay, go ahead.
one of the major issues we came across was Site 10, which was a 60-inch pipeline that crosses San Mateo Creek. The project called for it to remove the existing piers, temporarily support it, and construct new piers. But there is no backup pipeline, so if any failure to pipeline here would be catastrophic. So what we did is we came up with a new design. We worked together with the team. We got it approved. We had many agencies we had to get approval from also. Fish and Game, we're working in the creek. So we partnered up and got through that and came up with a design that had a lot less risk, and it was very successful, and we managed to get the new design approved and constructed within the time frame allowed. And as Jim said, there was 5 separate shutdowns, and each of them had their own LDs and knock-on effects. If we couldn't complete one section, it had effects on the next section. So we developed basically a culture of partnering that we met on a weekly basis, we met on a daily basis. If we preempted any problems that came up and pre-planned, and basically just worked together, and I don't think the project would have completed any other way.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
I'd like to add a couple of things to that. This is the only pipeline that supplies the water to the area. So in essence, if we lost this pipeline, they're up in boiling water. But the other thing is, because we go through many jurisdictions, it goes right on top of the San Mateo Creek. There are fines involved in the millions if we should spill into the creek, the steelhead, which is a protected species. So we got to make sure that we develop a plan that we have confidence that it will work. Basically what we did was we did some temporary support. We, I think, left 1 pier in place.
We left 4 piers in place, constructed the new piers, and then I had enough time.
Microphone?
Sorry, we constructed 2 new piers, and we redesigned the piers so that we could leave the existing piers in place, and then we allowed the piers to achieve full strength before we demolished the existing piers, so that we had full confidence in what we were doing was going to actually work.
I'm sorry, one last thing. This was from a value engineering standpoint. We did a value engineering analysis on this, so there was a saving to the city and to the contractor in performing this work, not only in the risk factors, but also in economically.
So I think there's a couple of great points there if you're catching it. You know, first of all, most all partnered projects deliver a value engineering component, and it's a natural byproduct of partnering. You can't help but bring teams together in an environment of innovation and collaboration and not find better ways of building things. No disregard to any of the designers or engineers in the house, but you know, you're out there building it, you see what you're up against, and you know, that is a huge win for all parties. The value engineering component, to be able to save the owner, you know, money, and maybe make a little bit on the side of the contractor and come up with a better design that probably saves time, that's a triple win. So great stuff there. You talked about external stakeholders. How did you implement or bring them into the process of partnering so they weren't surprised and you had their cooperation and you made that a positive element as well?
Actually, most of the work with regard to the stakeholder were done prior to us coming on board. So there were MOUs with all the city agencies. So they were well aware of what we need to do. Before we did any work, there was a pre-construction meeting with every city. And then we have weekly progress meetings. They're always invited to the meetings, and some do attend. And so they attended the meeting. We had our pre-construction meetings. We also have field meetings with them, because this is an underground piping work. So they do need to come out once in a while to help us address certain issues that was unknown at the time.
And I think you might have touched on Site 12, but that seemed to be a specific challenge with the El Camino Real and the 100-year-old highway there and all the traffic. Maybe touch on that a little bit more, and what were the elements of partnering that helped you overcome that?
Well, El Camino Real was a slipline pipeline replacement, so we called out for 17 pits in which you'd insert new pipe inside the existing pipe to minimise the disruption to the traffic. So the call was for 17 pits to eliminate the hardest areas to slip line through. But once we actually went out to construct it, we could only dig 12 of these 17 pits. So we had to come up with, and there was also AT&T and some other agencies that had facilities in there that were not known or incorrectly shown, and they had an inability to move these. So we had to partner up with the PUC and with ourselves and with our pipeline company, come up with shorter pipeline segments and come up with some innovative ways of actually slip lining inside a pipeline rather than having to actually dig a pit. So this was, again, planning. We had meetings before we ever even dug a hole out there. As soon as we did start to dig a hole and found unknowns and stuff that's not supposed to be there, we had other meetings and then subsequent follow-up meetings to see what was the quickest way to get something moved. We had a 2-year time frame to get this entire pipeline constructed and put back in service. And at our first meeting with AT&T, they told us it takes probably about 2 years to move a pipeline, move one of their lines. So as a team, we had to sit down and figure out that's obviously not going to work. How do we work around these issues? So El Camino Real, like you said, it's a 100-year-old highway with many, many unknowns, and we got the pipeline constructed within the time frame allowed and worked through all the processes through partnering and working together.
Excellent, excellent. What would you say, had partnering not been in place, what would have been the ramifications? I mean, you know, I think you've laid it out pretty well about the, you know, magnitude of the job and some of the obstacles, but had you not had partnering and it was just business as usual, you know, there's a conflict, okay, I'm the contractor, I go to the inspector says write an RFI, you know, the RFI goes to the designer, maybe a couple of weeks later you get something, you go back out there, that doesn't work. You know, what would it have been like as business as usual at tennis with the letter writing back and forth and all that stuff?
It wouldn't have gotten constructed within 2 years. I mean, the culture of partnering has to be brought on from the start, so that if we send in an RFI or a question, we don't get the spec book thrown back at us. We all can read the spec book, we know what it is, but when we send in an RFI or a question, it means we're reading something and we don't understand what you're trying to do. So there's 3 weeks in the spec for them to respond, and then, you know, you can follow all the spec, but you'll never get it constructed. So we said, okay, if we send in the question, we want you guys to take it to your engineers, and we'll set time frames within, say, 5 days, if that's possible. And that started the culture of, okay, you get to me this quickly, I'll get you a response quickly, and then I'll get you something else quickly. And that carried on throughout the project. And if it wasn't for that, I mean, like you said, if we send an RFI and we get 3 weeks, we get a response, and then we do the same thing, it stalls. It doesn't keep moving forward.
And this was only one part of an overall program. So there was projects that needed to happen right after this got done. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So the ramifications and delays and all that, it would have wreaked havoc for the whole program, not just this individual project.
Yeah, we had 5 individual shutdowns and milestones which we had to meet. So they'd actually take an entire pipeline out of service, and they'd have to reroute water to the peninsula. Then we would construct within that area and then get the pipeline back in service. And then we couldn't move on to the next section of work until this previous section of work was completed. So essentially it's 5 projects within one project itself. And one project can't start, one phase can't start until the previous phase is completed.
Excellent. Final question on lessons learned. And you know, this is as powerful as anything. When you're in a partnering environment, you know, you live it, you get through it, you're proud of it, you're done, but, you know, being able to capture the lessons learned, you know, and use those as a tool to move forward so that you're better educated, better prepared, and can use best practices on your next project is a tremendously powerful element of partnering. And what was your takeaway from that, you know, from the lessons learned side of partnering? What maybe did you have anything that didn't go as planned and you kind of go, I wish we did this better? You can share your sense here.
The biggest thing I felt through partnering was the dispute resolution ladder, because that we sat down at the start, we picked out who needs to be on the ladder and in a time frame before it gets moved up on a ladder. So we picked the guys in the field, gave them maybe 2 days. But if you give them more than that, then it becomes where they come to an impasse, and they're both very passionate about their stance on something. So if you set up the dispute resolution ladder, it means they can agree to disagree within 2 days. They can move on to the next phase of their work, then the next stage, the ladder can kind of come to a discussion. If they can't move it, they move it on up. But it just prevents people from actually coming to loggerheads and not to agree to disagree and move on with the project. And I think that was the biggest part of how the project keeps moving forward. You just move it up, move it up, move it up.
Good. Jim, how about you? Any takeaways for you?
Yeah, I think it was extremely important that we had these pre-planning. If we hadn't had this, when we go through the various agencies, we wouldn't be able to be on their agenda for doing some of this work, because it involves them shutting down their traffic and rerouting their utilities as we go through it. I think it's also very important that we met on a weekly basis. I was very fortunate that I have a very good project manager that participated in all these meetings. So there was a high level of communication on this project, and as such, we were able to resolve issues right then and there, and not just project manager, my supervisors, and ops and water department. They were always in these meetings. They were in every single week meetings.
Excellent. Okay, at this time I'd like to introduce Jessica Romm, and Jessica and I go back to the specifications committee where we were trying to improve that phone book that we used to work through. And you know, Jessica and PUC and her history of being a partner early on. And I also ran into a good friend that's here in the crowd. Dawn Ng, raise your hand. I want to recognize Dawn because Dawn and DPW was a pioneer of partnering years and years ago when we were trying to partner jobs. It was kind of like the Lone Ranger. You know, he was the only one we could latch onto when we were trying to get back to reasonableness. And I appreciate, Dawn, what you've done and the groundwork you laid here. But Jessica as well. And Jessica, maybe a couple thoughts on from your side as a facilitator, how it went.
First of all,
you come away with an accent.
I
you got some goodies.
I came away with some goodies.
Oh, there you go.
There you are.
Do you have a name?
Here you are. Whoops, I dropped one.
Now, you would throw these at people when they weren't paying attention?
There you go. See,
okay.
they light up.
Oh, there you go. Nice.
First of all,
it's giving me a headache. I hope you weren't hungover, John. Shut up. Okay. Go, Jess.
This team was exceptional, but it was really extraordinary because it was faced with so many potential obstacles and roadblocks. Not only what was not known, but what they did know, whether it was the traffic on El Camino, bones under creeks, you name it, it was there, or it probably will be. And in addition, as I mentioned yesterday, they were under a very strict schedule because this is part of a much larger program. And so you had many other projects that were reliant on their project to complete. So it wasn't just a singular project, it was multiple projects. So that's first of all. And they were able to do that in a very passionate, communicative way. We had many meetings, but they all reached resolution. So it was terrific. But more importantly, I have to say something about the PUC. Since 2007, we instituted on 46 different water improvement projects, 160 different forms of partnering. And as a result, I believe that the water system, and if Mike's still here, he can attest to that, we have been able to complete almost all of the projects with very few issues. It's been incredible, and it's all because of partnering. And it's because they allowed me to be that neutral body who would visit all of the different projects, giving the same message so that everyone knew that senior management was really, really committed to this program and to the partnership. And so on each project, we developed a partnership. Not just partnering, a partnership. So it's not two teams, it's one team. And when each side begins to realize, as this team did, that you are fortunate because you have a much bigger team than you figured. You had the contractor side, it's not just the city side. That makes a huge difference in really focusing then on what you need to achieve, no matter what it takes. And this group did that.
Excellent. Well, you've heard a lot of good things. Am I live? Really?
You don't need it.
Speak up, Mike. Yeah. Okay, well, whatever. Obstacle, challenge, opportunity. So anyways, you've heard a lot of good things about these projects, and there's some consistent, elements of partnering that ring through, right? Safe projects, thousands, hundreds of thousands of hours with no lost time incidents, value engineering, cost savings, collaboration, external partners being brought in, the dispute resolution ladder, elevating conflict timely decision making, resolution of issues. These aren't just projects that, hey, the team got along and, we were really good friends and, we went out afterwards and had a beer at the pub. These are teams that said, we strive to do a better way of doing business. We want this a world-class performance, and if we use partnering, we guarantee that the likelihood of success is greater, much higher, okay? So a round of applause for our two panels. And we got a couple of questions here to share with you from the crowd. And this is, what partnering practices did you use on this project that you now use on other projects? So where have you taken what you learned here and said, I want to do this again? It's open to either and both. Whoever would like to speak.
I think something that Quinn mentioned earlier about the human factor of projects and partnering is really important, and it's something that we're both taking to this next project that we're working on together. I think partnering really prompts you to think about what's best for the project instead of what's best for the individual contractor or the owner's interests. But that doesn't mean you're supposed to forget.
Should be wearing a clown outfit, I guess. Yes, I'm sorry.
But that doesn't mean to neglect the individual human needs that people have. And I think that checking in that Quinn did and started doing on our first project working together has been so resounding, and is something that we're carrying on to our team now. So I think that's a very important tool.
Okay.
Yeah, earlier when we were talking about, we started about, we had partnering at the start of the project. I think that it's very important that we revisit all these goals as the project moves along. And that's one part that we kind of I took away from that as I inherited a current project right now that has been in construction for about 2 years now. So people start to lose steam, lose track of the goals that they had set forth in the very beginning. There's been a lot of issues. Everybody's overworking and either double ship and so on. Recently, we revisit these goals, and it kind of re-energized everybody and reminded them what our goals are, and we did that last week. As a result, we were able to solve about 30 change orders in a 12-hour marathon meeting with the contractor, which was an extremely big accomplishment.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, this is a really good one. This is a question about how does partnering help concerns about a design team losing control and their professional stamp and their signature being responsible. So you talked about value engineering, we talked about maybe redesign and those types of things. John, did you come across with a situation where the design engineers kind of said, "Wait a minute, that's my thing. I don't want you messing with what I did."
Yeah, but you have to approach it the right way. You have to approach it correctly. You have to let them, you show them that their design is really, really good, but you might have something that's a little better.
Wow, haven't we dressed him up well? Quinn, how about on your side?
Yeah, I think having worked on a number of projects Specifically, walking into this project, seeing Tania's stamp on the drawings, we were concerned that there was over-ownership of the design. But you know, I think it was really that open and honest communication about, hey, we have an idea, and really being, Tania and her group being, or her whole team being receptive to ideas and changes that were really, that really showed that we were focused towards the goal of delivering a better project instead of just one. Okay, and Sue has something to add.
So what I would say is that I think it goes back to bringing the designer in as part of the team. And too often I don't see that happening. You know, the project is in construction, it's already designed, it's thrown over the fence, and now we're going to partner. And the designer needs to be an integral part of the whole partnering process, hopefully earlier than construction. But if it does happen, then they need to be there. And too often I see owners who don't want to pay for the designers to be there. The designers need to be at the table. They're an important part of this. And think about the best projects you've been on. It's the ones where the designers were there, right? We're talking, we're working it out as we found an issue. Okay, we can do that. Let's walk the site. Let's figure it out. And so I think that's what I would say. We need to bring them in.
Yeah. Yeah, excellent. Okay, for the SFO team specifically, how did you deal with cost control, added costs from change orders, etc., throughout the 3-month construction project?
You know, I think what helped, there were certainly some added costs due to unanticipated conditions, underground conditions mostly. There was a lot of that, but what really helped was Quinn and his team bringing forth a number of really, really good value engineering ideas at the onset of the project. Hey, Tania, I like that you designed it this way, but I think we could do it this way and still give you the same product, faster, cheaper, whatever. So I think that's what really helped offset some of the additional costs that we ran into. So anything else?
I think one thing that helped was our project team didn't get bogged down in paperwork. I think that's often a challenge on some of these jobs, especially a job like this where it's entirely schedule driven and it's maybe the first project that's going to complete out of an overall program. So we have an impact on the whole program, not just our contract. So the paperwork can wait. Let's agree on something, and we can iron it out to the penny later. So let's make an agreement that we have an issue and what the resolution is, and then we move forward so the project doesn't get hurt by this issue.
Excellent. Okay, and a final question we've got is, you know, for both of you, whoever wants to jump in, but how were stakeholders engaged in the project through the partnering process? And did partnering bring out key stakeholder needs? How did you address them, and how did that work out? Maybe start with you guys.
I said it earlier, the pre-planning that we had with all the agencies, all the cities, that was very helpful because they really knew exactly what we were going to do. So they planned ahead for us to be there. So the other thing was right before, so that was the pre-planning. Right before construction, we also have meetings with them, and of course they always show up to our progress meetings. So they're always well aware of when we'll be there and what we need to do.
And they felt like their concerns and you know, issues were addressed. And
I think I can say with confidence that I've developed some pretty good relationships with the Burlingame and I don't name all the cities as you move up. Is simply because they trusted us that when they have an issue, they brought it up and we were on it almost immediately.
Awesome.
Public outreach was a big part of our project as well. We had a public outreach firm, and they were involved in dealing with the cities on a daily basis as well, and bringing concerns back to us.
Yeah. Quinn, you guys? Final thoughts?
Yeah, we involved our stakeholders in the few formal partnering sessions that we had, but again, like they said, they were involved in all of our weekly meetings. And we learned so much about their preferences and what they need. You know, the FAA, for instance, the FAA isn't just the FAA, in case you didn't know that. It's the tower, it's the navigates guy. There's so many different pieces to the FAA, like there are different pieces to the city. So we learned all about that, and we're so lucky to have done that on that project, which was a $1 million a week project, because we're dealing with all of the same people now on our project that we're starting. I think this Sunday we're starting, which is a $1 million a day project, and we have the benefit of all of the lessons that we learned from our stakeholders in that initial partnering meeting with them.
$1 million a day, and you guys are smiling. Okay, so let's hear it for the closeout of the SFO Runway Safety Area project and the business.